Hi everybody, welcome back to a new series, a fairly short series I think, on the channel, probably around about 3 parts, where I'm going to be building this brand new Airfix release, the Jaguar Gr.1 in 1/48 scale. Just came out in the UK in the last couple of days in March. So it's been eagerly anticipated. I saw the test build at the Bolton show earlier on in the year. Looked really nice, built up. The Jaguar actually is quite a small aircraft, so it's not going to be over big on the bench. Nice and manageable, so I'm really looking forward to getting this one on the road. I'm going to be building this one out of the box, with the only exception being to add some detail to the seat. That's something that really is needed if you're building the kit, I think. But apart from that, we'll be doing it as Airfix intended. My first impressions of the kit are really positive. It's the surface detail is really nice. There's some clever engineering touches to the build, as we'll see as we get into it. And I'm really looking forward to this one. The scheme that I'm going to be doing is XZ118. This is an aircraft from Operation Groundby during Desert Storm in 1990-91, and it's in the overall sand coloured scheme, sometimes known as Desert Pink or Desert Tan. That's enough of the introductions. Let's get over to the bench and crack the box up, and let's make a start on this one. We'll be familiar by now with the modern form of Airfix instructions, which are like this. They present very few parts per construction step, so they're not overcrowded, nice and clear. And we're going to have to make a decision fairly on about the version that we're doing, because Airfix offer 2 styles of the Martin Baker Type 9 seat. There's the earlier Type 2, I think it is, and one a Type 3, which is for later aircraft. So you've got to decide the decal option that you're doing. In my case, I'm going to be doing the Operation Groundby aircraft in Desert Tan. And for that, I'm going to need the later seat, which is a shame because I have got an Aries Mark 9 seat. But by the time you see this video, there'll be quite a few inbox reviews, and I'm not interested in doing any of that. If you want to see what the kit looks like in the box, you just need to flick over to those channels. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to be getting on and building it. So I'll get the parts cut out and we'll make a start. The main difference between the 2 styles of seat is in the head box. The earlier style had a very concave and rounded front to the head box. Ours is flatter. That's a bit strange. Airfix give us 2 sets of identical parts for the seats, for the seat back and the cushions. Obviously you only need 1. Now the clue there maybe is that they're planning a 2-seater at some point in time. So you're going to need 2 seats for that, obviously. That can be the only explanation for duplicating these parts. And the other thing, of course, is that they've moulded the nose section as a separate part from the rest of the fuselage. So all clues there that we're going to be getting a 2-seater at some point. Okay, the first part's cleaned up. We'll just do a little bit of assembly. This is a recent feature of Airfix kits, these large, what I assume are ejector pins. But Airfix do, in the instructions, direct us to remove those. They're highlighted in green, so as I said, it's a new feature. I don't quite know why they're not removed in the mould. They're easy enough to clean up, just a minute or two. I always find that with the modern Airfix kits, you shouldn't really have any problem with fit, but you might just miss one of these fairly new style of sprue gate which overlaps onto the mating surface. So a test fit will just show if you've missed any of those, because the parts won't go together properly, obviously. It's just worth doing. I missed the one here on the nose just then. You don't want to get to the point of gluing the fuselage halves up, for example, and finding that you've missed one of those. Just make sure it's going to go together nice and snug, which that does. Give a quick test fit of the cockpit. That's going to go together nice. So the next step for me is to sort out this harness. So I'm just going to rob the one from the Aries Mark 9. Get that fitted, primed. And then we can move on at this step to getting all the other fuselage parts, so the undercarriage bay is next up. Because I want to get all the assemblies that I'm doing in this episode in and primed before doing the painting. So we'll do it all at once, just load the airbrush up once with the primer. Now, one slight issue with the Airfix seat is that it's a little bit plain in that it lacks the secondary pad which covered the basic seat pad. So I'm just going to make something that represents that out of some milliput. This is epoxy putty. So we'll just apply this to the seat and shape it to add just that little bit more bulk to the pad on the back and the seat. Milliput moulds with water, so you can just dampen whichever tool you're using just to start to smooth it out and work it a little bit. Now, there are plenty of reference photographs online for the Martin Baker Mark 9 seat. So if you want to do this work, you just pick one of those up and take a look at how these cushions lie, or these pads lie, and just try and replicate those if you're interested. It's not essential, I wouldn't have said. If you want the Airfix seat, you're happy with that, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so I think that's just about okay. A lot of this will get covered up by the photo etch harness, so I don't need to fuss too much about it, just get the basic shape of this pad correct. It's nice to get some undercuts to the moulding. That will come out nicely with some painting and shading. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. Probably give it another bit of a clean up just to get this epoxy putty off the side of the plastic. Usually just washes off. But we'll come back to that once it's dry and we'll fit the belts. So these are multi-part assemblies, the undercarriage bays, and my preference is to paint each bulkhead separately, get them weathered and then assemble them at the end once they're all done. But that's just a personal preference. You could assemble the whole bay and paint it and weather it if that's what you want to do. I just find it harder to get into cleanup. Just dry fit them just to make sure that they all go together okay. I'm sure they will. So just as I clean the parts up, I'll get them mounted ready for painting. This is just some double-sided tape. Well, these parts here are for the air brake bays, which I will deploy open. I don't think it's an option in the Airfix kit to omit these parts if you're closing the speed brakes. I think they probably add some structure to the assembly, to the fuselage. It certainly doesn't tell you to omit them in the instructions. Got the nose wheel bay as well. Some nice detail on these bays. Hopefully we'll get that to pop out with some weathering wash and a bit of dry brushing maybe. Okay, so those are all the internal parts that we need. So the first step is to give them all a coat of primer. I'll be using Mr. Surfacer 1500 grey. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to give the seat an overcoat of Mr. Surfacer 1500 black. Okay, so that's all the parts primed, and as you can see I've had a bit of a change of heart deciding to prime everything in black. This is Mr. Surfacer 1500 black, and I've even done that for the wheel bays because they're going to be getting a coat of this, which is zinc chromate yellow primer, and that hopefully should look quite nice over a black base. It just enables you to mist the zinc chromate on, and you start to get a little bit of shading straight away on the parts. So whilst I've got the yellow to hand, I'll get the main gear bays and the air brake bays painted. The nose gear bay is called out as black in the Airfix instructions, so that's what I'll go for. Okay, so the yellow chromate has gone on okay, and you can see that you just get a slight shading effect if you mist this on over black. So we're going to need to do a little bit more work on those in a while, but for the time being I'll just put them to one side to dry and we can get on with the cockpit. So what I'm doing here is just dry brushing the black with some Tamiya rubber black, and that just starts to pop the detail out a little bit, and the effect is quite subtle really. It's probably going to be difficult to pick it up on the camera, but it does allow the eye to just pick out that moulded detail. Now if this isn't strong enough, this effect, you can go over it very gently with some German grey, which is a step lighter than the rubber black. Now Airfix provide decals for the consoles and for the instrument panel, but to be honest, the detail on the side consoles particularly is so nice that I'm going to paint those. You'll get a better result than the decal, I suspect. The instrument panel, I'll use a combination of the kit decal for the actual instruments or dials, and the bottom part of the panel I'll pick out with some paint. Okay, so I'll just give the instrument panel a coat of gloss and then we'll get those decals on. I'm just picking out some of the seat details now. The cushion that I made out of the milliput and the photo etch harness that I robbed. And for this I'm using some Citadel colour. There's a really good range, so I'm going to be using at least 3 shades of green on this. And this is one area where you can improve the Airfix seat on the head box here. The detail of this strap is very faint, so I've improved those with some lead sheet just cut into strips, and it just defines those 2 straps a little bit better than the Airfix kit does. Okay, just pick the harness out there. There's some decals to go on this seat, so I'll give this a coat of gloss varnish at this stage. Once it's matted down I can add the metallic parts, the buckles and so on. So coat of gloss varnish next. Okay, so the gloss varnish has dried now, so I want to get some decals on. Start off with the instrument panel. Now this panel is too big, I think, to fit in one, especially with the nice raised detail that Airfix have provided in the instrument panel part. So I'm going to cut this up into sections. I've just put a bit of microset on the part, and I'm just going to leave that to just settle a moment. I'll cut the other side out as well. These are starting to settle a little bit. The thing with applying decals like this is just not to rush them. They will go down if you leave them for long enough. You just got to be patient. Okay, just leave that to dry a little bit, and we might need a touch of microsol just to get those to bed down a little bit more. Just one check to make sure everything's where it should be, and then we'll just leave that alone for a while. Just come back to the instrument panel. So this needs some microsol on it just to finish off the application. The cartograph decals respond really well to microsol and set. So again, once that's on, leave it alone for at least 10 minutes, and you should find that the decals have settled down over the detail. The important thing is not to try to move them around at this stage, because the microsol will turn them very soft and they'll just wrinkle up, or you'll destroy them altogether if you mess around with them, so just leave them alone. Okay, so all the decals have dried. Next step is to give all these parts a coat of flat varnish just to seal the decals in, and then we can finish up this cockpit. So just taking some gloss varnish now and just dropping that into the instruments. And finally, just a little bit of aluminium on the belt buckles. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave it alone now. Now the ejection handle here is a new thing for me. It's a new technique which was pointed out to me by my friend Christian, and I believe it's originally from Scalaton. I'm not absolutely sure about that, but I think it is. And what it involves is just getting some thin 0.3mm wire. I've used copper wire in this case. Paint one strand in black and one in a dark yellow amber colour, and then I've just twisted those together. I used a drill chuck to get a nice even twist on the two, and eventually what happens is the yellow and the black strands come together and give you that effect. It's certainly easier than trying to paint the black and yellow stripes on a pull handle. I think they look quite a bit neater, and using the amber instead of a yellow I think just gives the impression of a dirty handle rather than having it too bright. So that's a new one for me, and it seems to have worked fairly well. So that's the seat done. We can now get that in together with the instrument panel, and the cockpit is complete. Be ready to go into the fuselage halves. No rudder pedals on this kit, but they would be virtually impossible to see, especially in a black cockpit. With all the cockpit done, I can get the nose section together. Just clean off the paint. Now there's plenty of location points for this assembly. There's 3 pins down each side, so it's not going to move anywhere, so I'm not going to bother gluing this in. It's going to trap it between the fuselage halves. So that's quite a clever design to get that nice neat fit. Just test fitting the combing there, and you can just see how tight and small the Jaguar cockpit is. So you don't really have to do that much work on it, I don't think, especially if you're going to do like I am, which is to close the canopy up. So that's the nose section. I'm going to leave that to dry now. I'm just making sure that we don't have a step on the underside. It wanted to do that, but I think I've got that nice and flush. So just keep an eye on that if you're building the kit. So I'll just put that to one side and move on next to sorting out these undercarriage bays. These are the main gear bays. So these have had that zinc chromate primer colour, and now I'm just going to add a weathering wash with some brown panel liner. This is an enamel product, and I want to put a tiny amount on, not too much, just to highlight the detail. So I'm just mixing a little bit of enamel thinner into the panel liner mix. Without this step, the bays would look a little bit flat, I suppose. This is an AK panel liner. It's actually for brown and green camouflage. Came in a set of weathering colours, and these paints are really versatile. You can add that element of shading if you want, so you can move them around, remove them if you need to, and it's really worth doing this step, I think, when you've got such nice moulded detail as Airfix have provided. Now, as you saw earlier on, this wash is going on over a gloss coat, and basically all that does is it contains the wash to the detail, kind of sucks into the areas around the detail rather than spreading out. If you just put this on a matte finish, it would tend to just stain and run into the paintwork rather than around the detail. If you get too much on, you just apply some more thinners just to reactivate it, and then you can suck out the pigment with a dry brush. Sometimes it's a good idea just to apply some neat thinners into the detail, and that holds the wash as well, prevents it from spreading out too much. So I'll carry on, get the rest of this wash applied. Once it's dry, I can give it a coat of flat varnish just to bring it back to the original paint finish. Just bringing out a few little details on these bulkheads, just with some Tamiya lacquer flat aluminium. Okay, we can do a bit of assembly now. Okay, so with the bays done, just a quick reminder, if you're building the kit, don't forget to paint the back of this bulkhead here, both sides of the bulkhead. This after side is visible through the air brake bay. Now, one thing that Airfix have done, I think for the first time, certainly the first time I've seen it, is to use a slide mould, which you can see here, this shape. And that's enabled them to mould the detail on this undersurface here. as well as the side detail. And that's a really good thing, because otherwise you would probably have to have a separate part and a join line along here, this sort of point, in order to give us that sort of detail. So that's a really good step forward, if it is, I think, the first time that Airfix have used that sort of technology. They may have used it on one of the 24 scale kits that I've missed, but certainly it's the first Airfix kit I've come across with that sort of moulding technology used. So let's get the bays fitted. Now these are obviously quite structural. They've got the undercarriage legs to fit into them, so we want a really good connection. Airfix help us because they've given us these really positive slots that the bulkheads go into, so that's a positive location and also plenty of glue surface. And the bays clip in nicely at that point. One thing that I have forgotten though is just to remove those ejector pins. It does tell us to do that in the instructions. And the air brake bay is a similarly good fit. We've got a pin here that locates the part precisely. Just about clips together really. Now one thing that I like to do with undercarriage bays is just reinforce them a little bit, bearing in mind that these are taking quite a bit of weight. So I'm just using a strip of styrene there. So this step isn't essential, it just adds that little bit more strength to the undercarriage bay, but I'm pretty sure the Airfix design will stand up to the weight of the aircraft on the undercarriage. Okay, so I'm going to let those dry completely before I join the fuselage halves, so I'll leave them overnight, come back in the morning and get the fuselage put together. Okay, so these wheel bays have had sort of 15 hours to dry. I've left them overnight and they're nice and solid. I'm going to be able to easily take the weight of the model when it's done. So we can get the fuselage assembled now, and it's just as well at this stage just to check through the instructions just to make sure you've not missed any, say, holes to be drilled or other bits of preparation before you come to join the fuselage halves. I have cleaned the seam lines up, or the joining surfaces, just to make sure that we're going to get plenty of glue on those and get a good bond of the two sides of the fuselage. Well, there's nothing else to do, so we can get this assembly together now. This is quite an interesting feature I've not seen before, which is a set of interlocking tabs on this bulkhead at the back of the air brake bay, and they lock into each other like that. Just got a sprue gate there that's interfering with the fit. Just check that again. So we'll get some glue on this, get it taped together. So just get some tape ready, just so we're not fiddling around when the glue on the fuselage is drying. So we're all ready to go. Airfix point out in the instructions to make sure to get these holes lined up. So we'll do as we're told. We want a nice flush surface as well while we're doing this. So this section here on the lower fuselage is the key area to concentrate on the fit, and that's because there's quite a bit of surface detail that you don't want to be erasing through lots of sanding, so try and get the two halves as close as you can at that point. I'm going to put a clamp on just to make sure it's nice and level. Okay, so for the moment that's all good. Leave that to dry before we remove the clamps and fit the forward part of the fuselage. This is the undersurface rear plate, if you like. It fits in this position at the back. That's really impressive fit. Again, with a bit of care joining that, we shouldn't have any problems with it. But first of all, we've got to drill some holes for our option. I think it's for one of the racks, one of the stores racks, so we'll do that. And for our option we've got to plug this hole for the navigation light. And that forms a little bulb on the outside, and we have a transparency which goes over that for the navigation light. The other options in the kit just have a clear plug, so a flush light underneath. So it's worth just checking through the instructions, not racing ahead. If you take care with this, it's possible to get a virtually seamless connection between the two. Just a case of getting it leveled up. It's just worth checking that. Your finger will tell if you've got that flush. Okay, that'll clean up really nicely. I'm sure we won't be able to tell that that's a separate part once we've finished with it. Okay, so that needs to dry now. Make sure that the seams are fully hardened before we do any cleanup. So coming back to the nose section, which has had that time to set, can start to work on the seam. It's a pretty good join we've got on this, so it shouldn't need too much work. I get asked regularly when I use this tool. It's a fiberglass pencil, and it's a really mild sort of abrasive on plastic. They're really meant to be used for things like cleaning flux off of solder joints, but I found them a really good tool for cleaning up plastic. It doesn't scratch, it's just a very gentle way of cleaning up a seam, and particularly getting rid of dried on glue. They're basically like a propelling pencil with fiberglass refills in them. And the other thing that I use quite a bit is these Tamiya sanding sponges, particularly on curved surfaces. Again, they come in different grades. This is a 1500 grade. Really gentle, doesn't scratch the plastic, and you can polish it down through the grades until you get a really smooth result. Again, your finger's the best guide to make sure that you've got that nice and flat. Don't want to step in this. Another good idea when you're sanding is just to make sure that you're not completely erasing the panel lines. So just make sure that they're still there, just going across this hatch at the bottom, because if you just carry on sanding you're going to lose it altogether, and it's harder to get the correct position once you've done that. So just keep on maintaining it. So I think that's close enough a join just to check it with some primer. Might need a little bit more work, but for now that seems pretty good. So the fuselage is going to need some fairly minimal cleanup really. It's gone together really well, and the last job for this first part of the build is to join the front and rear parts of the fuselage. So I've test fitted this and it's a really nice positive fit, so we can get this glued up. So the thing to do on a join like this is to apply the glue to the female surface, this part, rather than onto this part here, because what will happen is if you do it like that, when you push the nose in, the glue will push backwards and it'll fill the join up. And at this stage what I want to do is to try and preserve that panel line. That's an absolutely perfect fit. It's going to cause absolutely no problems at all. That'll clean up really well. It's an area on a design like this where you've got a nose section and a main fuselage section that can cause all sorts of problems on kits. If you get the slightest misalignment, you've got all sorts of sanding, filling to do, but this should clean up absolutely perfectly. So that's pretty impressive stuff, really nice design. So I'm just going to add a little bit of extra thin quick setting just to wick into that join. It'll give us a quicker bond. I'm going to add a clamp as well, just to really pinch that fuselage together so it's nice and flush. Okay, so that's mission accomplished for this first episode. Just aim to get the fuselage assembled, and looking through the kit, it won't take much to get the whole of the airframe put together at the start of the next episode. Just one thing to point out, I did make a note earlier on in the video about the nose wheel bay. Airfix in the main instructions tell us to paint it black, which is what I set out to do. But having done a bit more research and looking at the colour call out here on the decal scheme, we can see that the nose gear bay should be in the chromate colour. So I've gone back in and repainted that and detailed it, give it some weathering like I did with the main bays. So I hope if you're following the build, don't get caught out like I did by the accuracy in the Airfix instructions there. So that's all good. We're where I want to be for part 1. So as I said, in part 2 we're going to press on, get the airframe together and start to apply the main scheme, which is this desert tan colour on this Operation Granby Jag. Now there is a slight issue with this option, in that when the aircraft returned from the Gulf in 1991, the markings on the tail were refreshed with a largish white FF symbol, and Airfix tell us that that's decal number 161 on the sheet. In fact, 161 doesn't exist on the sheet. The decal sheet only goes up to 160. It's nowhere to be seen, so you can't actually do this unless you've got some spares in the decal bank somewhere. But whilst the aircraft was out in the Gulf, it just carried a small Y just ahead of the rudder, so I'll be doing the aircraft as it was in the Gulf. The other thing that I've noticed mentioned is that some early kits have had a problem with the canopy and windscreen. Fortunately mine are generally okay. There's a very tiny flaw in the oblong part of the windscreen, but it's barely noticeable. You can only see it if you really concentrate from some angles, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. But I think some other people have had larger difficulties with their initial kits. But that's a great start. This is a really nice kit to build out the box. This has gone together perfectly well. There's been no glitches in it at all, apart from the problem with the colour call-outs in the instructions. But the fit is first rate, and I really like the surface detail on the model. It's just pronounced enough to be able to carry a wash later on when we come to do that next time. So hopefully we should get that done in the next part, and we'll finish off, as I said, in part 3 with the stores and final details. So if you've got the kit, I hope you're going to build it. It's a really nice experience, so don't just leave it in the stash, folks. Get it out and build it, and we should end up with a very nice Jaguar at the end of the process. So thanks for looking in for this first part, and I'll hopefully see you for part 2 and throughout the rest of the build. In the meantime, enjoy your modelling, particularly if you're building this lovely kit, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now, everybody.